Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having us, and thank you for the kind introduction. So as an Office for Design and Innovation, we have been thinking a lot about this new term called the Metaverse. And it's funny, like every time we sort of like discuss this topic, we feel like we're sort of like traveling back into the future. Similarly, as in the early 90s, when everyone was talking about this new thing called the information superhighway, or the internet, as we refer to it right now. We feel that once again, we're sort of like trying to sort of like define an umbrella concept to describe a multitude of different, very distinct technologies. And as we sort of like perceive it, we feel that there's like a lack of a coherent definition of the metaverse. It's almost like a giant whiteboard where we just like put on some different technologies like crypto, AR, VR, games, creator economy, and then define that as the metaverse, which I think is problematic because, yeah, arguably this might be the next computing paradigm, which I'll touch upon. In our view, arguably also ever since the pandemic, we have been very much in this full metaverse existence. I mean, very much our digital and the physical lives are more intertwined than ever. We work remotely, we sort of like educate ourselves remotely. And perhaps we should sort of like see the metaverse as an event horizon that sort of like has no sort of like clear before and after shift. So perhaps to frame it differently, perhaps the metaverse is an attempt to create a common vision for what might come after the smartphone as sort of like the next computing paradigm. As sort of like we're sort of like entering the late scale of the mobile computing paradigm, so like there are much more one more thing type of innovation. So yes, sure, a faster camera, a faster processor, but there's not really like a profound change, and that's probably also the reason why Silicon Valley and Shenzhen-based companies are investing billions in creating that next billion people platform. But the big question is, what comes after it? We believe that sort of like the next paradigm shift will be called spatial computing, and is not defined traditionally, as we have seen with the smartphone and the home computer, by a single device, but instead by a multitude of different devices. And rather than calling it the metaverse, we prefer to refer to it as spatial computing, in which the environment becomes the interface. I think sort of like a good way to anticipate what these different devices will materialize this new spatial computing paradigm is simply by studying patent filings by large tech corporations, and which we did. So in collaboration with a studio based in Copenhagen called Studio Bjorn Ibsen, we released a paper called Patented Futures that reimagines the nondescript patent filings from tech corporations in a series of forward-looking designs. And basically, we sort of like endlessly browsed patent registers and sort of like translated these very abstract black and white drawings into highly realistically, perhaps mundane, everyday renderings. For instance, like this one, which is a patent by Apple, sort of like depicting a glove that would allow you to touch digital or virtual objects and get like physical stimuli. Or this one is sort of like proposed by Google that sort of like depicts a pair of slippers with metal bearings underneath them that sort of like allows you to walk in the same place forever when you roam virtual or augmented environments. So you're not sort of like have to hack a carpet with using bare feet, basically. There are also spatial audio buds is also a big one, and sort of like AR enhanced charm bracelets that sort of like function as a shortcut. But one sort of like particular patent that was sort of like reoccurring and almost like every large corporation at least filed one filing for it were AR glasses. And we strongly believe that sort of like augmented reality glasses will play a critical role in the spatial computing paradigm. as it allows you to interact with the world while staying present in the moment. So you're not sort of like facing a phone. And we can already sort of like see early signs of this. So in recent years, AR really gained momentum, reaching larger audiences, as we just seen through face filters or dancing hot dogs. But slowly but surely, sort of like the entertainment is transitioning into sort of like more utilitarian forms. So a good example is Ikea Place, which my former employee Space 10 developed for Ikea, which allows you to place virtual furniture inside your room. And at Modem, we actually also explored sort of like the more utilitarian AR applications in collaboration with Snap, for which we developed a series of lenses through the vertical of health and well-being. And one of these lenses we developed is called Posture Coach, that basically tries to democratize yoga exercises by using body tracking technologies and AR markers to sort of like indicate how you sort of like perform a next pose. Another example we did is called Breathings, that basically tries to democratize breathing exercises for people by translating people's unique breathing patterns using the mic input in a series of ethereal AR sculptures. And the nice thing about this is that you can also do it in real time together with friends using connected lenses. So basically you can sort of like do breathing exercises with a friend who's at the other side of the world, which is a quite poetic and deep experience. However, we feel that these kind of examples are sort of like early prototypes of where things are heading towards. And we strongly believe that with the introduction of AR glasses, aka ubiquitous AR, ultimately sort of like the physical and digital reality will merge, creating a concept called reality channels. And basically reality channels will allow us to switch between different realities. So sort of like your perception of this room might be a comic book, and mine might be a highly realistic 3D aquarium. So basically, each and every place might be experienced individually, very distinctively. And this sort of like new mediated reality will have a profound impact on the way we perceive and experience space. And this ultimately urged us to sort of like explore this new mediated reality and its impact on the built environment at large. So to do so, we worked together with Pablo Castillo, who is a research assistant at Harvard Graduate School of Design. And together we defined a series of principles mapping the vast promises and implications of this new urban mediated reality, which I'm going to talk you through now. So we strongly believe that sort of like ubiquitous AR will ultimately lead sort of like to the democratization and escalation of architecture. Traditionally, visionary architects, often white cis males in their 50s, would sort of like dictate the way in which we experience the built environment. But this is about to change. In a world where AR is ubiquitous, architecture will be basically practiced by anyone so inclined. And architecture will merge with sort of like different media forms such as filmmaking, game design, and programming to create like this new sort of like experimental form of media. And in architects will in their turn become mediators between sort of like the digital and physical realm. And we might experience environments like depicted in the work by Shane F. 3D as we're seeing here in the background. Another example is that the augmented city or ubiquitous AR will create a geosemantic mirror of reality, which is a fancy term that we will create like an exact replica of the real world in digital terms. So to put it differently, whatever we will see, the machine will also see. So smart glasses will capture the world through human eyes, while AI gradually learns to make sense of everything using computer vision. And we can already sort of like see early hints of this. So for instance, with the latest advancements in AI, this thing called neural radiance fields or nerves, we can now translate 2D imagery into highly realistic 3D models. So basically what you see here in the background is a video captured on a phone, but then sort of like an advanced algorithm sort of like translates the captured footage into like a highly 3D realistic model, which ultimately will lead to sort of like a giant digital twin of the world, where every single lamppost, street sign will have its sort of like digital replica, and hence sort of like geo-anchored augmented reality experiences. And this is already being applied in technologies such as Google's Geospatial API, which are also exploring NERS using Street View. I think it's sort of like with this new sort of like shift in computing paradigm, I think it's fair to say that static environments will be a thing of the past. So architecture will no longer be about construction, but more about like spatial alteration. While buildings continue to be static and passive, the built environment will be fluid and ever evolving. And a good example of this is sort of like this recent example shot at Shibuya, Tokyo, where basically you can sort of like transform old buildings and experience sort of like the city of the past using AR. Furthermore, the urban environment will be very much used as sort of like a scenario for films, entertainment, creating sort of like site-specific experiences. And this is already happening through the use of Snap's AR landmarkers, and will be further enhanced by the Geospatial API by Google we just saw. The fourth sort of like principle, as a result of all this, the augmented city will not only be defined by sort of like drawings and regulations, but through geo-specific digital protocols, digital zoning laws, if you like. And perhaps like the most explicit example of this is Pokemon Go, the game that allows you to capture Pokemon in the real world using AR. But at the peak of its craze, all these Pokemons become sort of like popped up at very dangerous situations that basically urge people, to sort of like catch Pokemon whilst driving, and ultimately that led sort of like local governments to force Niantic, the developer of Pokemon Go, to restrict Pokemons from certain areas, which arguably is one of the first digital zoning laws. So I think what we'll also see is that sort of like zoning laws will be expanded beyond sort of like local governments and sort of like large technology corporations such as Google, Apple, and Meta will gain more influence within this particular space. And then finally, augmented interfaces need a geometric and semantic understanding of reality in order to mediate between physical and digital worlds. So we strongly believe that this will also have like a profound impact on the way we eventually build the environment, because material properties such as reflectiveness and transparency are very difficult for sensors and cameras to be picked up. So perhaps the ubiquitous AR will ultimately sort of like dictate the choice of building materials for the city to be readable and understandable for humans and machines alike. So just to sum up, the democratization and escalation of architecture, geosemantic mirror of reality, spatial hyper-customization, location-based digital protocols, and machine-readable materials might be a result of ubiquitous AR and forms of like the principles for the augmented city. I would love to end on this quote from Mark Weiser, stating that the most profound technologies are those that disappear. And I think at some point we might not sort of like refer to the term augmented reality anymore, but instead refer to reality as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Bas. Hi. We have time for a Q&A, which is really, really lovely. We have Monin out here on the side. She has a stick mic, and she's happy to bring it to whoever puts up the hand. We have the first one here. if you could state your name, a little bit, your affiliation, a context from who you are, and end with a question mark.
Hi, my name is Tatiana. I work in development on films, TV series, and documentaries, so a lot of visual storytelling. And I'm curious about the field you're in and how the reduction rate of our power of perception is being tracked, or if it's being tracked much at all. I'm thinking like this age-old distinction between digital and obvious word.
Physical, maybe?
No, sorry, it's analog. Analog sound and digital sound. So I lived for many years with an audio engineer who would also always teach me to hear the difference, and I thought there's no difference when Spotify appeared. And with a little bit of training, oh boy, there's a difference. And the digital has wiped out so much of the texture of the sound. The same is happening with visual. I see these spaces turning into canvases for simplified symbols to put in place of the textured reality. So what's being gained, what's being lost is my big question working with filmmakers who are kind of losing touch with reality more and more. Physical reality, I mean.
I mean, I can start on that just about. Yes, it's super interesting. If you look at the kind of different senses, obviously some of them are inherently physical senses, like the sense of smell, for example, is to do with chemicals coming into receptors, and there's kind of a lock and key mechanism that then releases your perception of that smell. But so the smell of rose, for example, a real rose, it has, I think, roughly, let's say, 250 different olfactory molecules in there. However, the human nose will think it's a rose, let's say. This may be the comparison between digital and analog, with only 3 ingredients. One of them, phenyl ethyl alcohol, linalool, and geraniol, I think, from memory. And so that's enough to give you the smell of rose. And so if I were to kind of create an artificial experience, it's not quite the digital from the analog, but I'm merely selecting it, and it's enough to give you the impression of rose. So we could call that, for now, the digital impression of it. There's arguments that that's positive because all the other 247 olfactory molecules may trigger your allergies, but you don't actually need that to smell a rose. So is this better? We also can create those molecules synthetically, so it means that I don't have to grow 10 fields of roses in Bulgaria, destroy them, and then fly them to the other side of the world for this experience. But those are the positive formats of it, and I think certainly, obviously, there is a complexity there that is being lost, and it's also, I think, to do with the sensitivity of our understanding so far. Your audio engineer opened your ears up to that, and I think in being such a nascent field, that's very much something that hasn't been explored yet, for sure.
Perhaps to add to that, I think arguably it's not something that is now occurring. Like if you look at many hundred years ago, we were able to distinguish many different types of color of green. Of people living in the Arctics have like 20 different words, or like even more for snow. And I think it's also very much that process gradually already declined or shifted or changed perhaps. So I think it's not really that sort of like dependent on digital or analog. I think it's more about like shifting living conditions and environments.
Cool. We have a question more down here. Come on in. Right. You take the long way around. Over here on the other side of the end. Oh. No worries.
Just while they're traveling, there is also actually an archive of scent on just the outside of Paris called the Osmothèque, because scents are also disappearing, because if they're made from, say, a natural harvest of jasmine, that's also changing because of climate change and different kind of growing patterns. So there already exist many scents that you would smell in the past, maybe have been preserved, that you wouldn't get today in the world. It's constantly shifting.
We are ready down here.
Hi, yes, I have a question for Lucia. So my background is in design and interactional design in general. In the past few years, I felt that platforms like Instagram and Facebook have been doing too much advertising for my taste. And I was wondering what your thought is, because you included these bubbles of advertising into your AR experience. Is there not a certain tipping point of people being maybe tired of advertising within their social spaces, and could it not be that has already hit kind of a ceiling before Meta will bring out AR experiences with advertising in them? Or the other way around, do you think there is still an opportunity of reducing advertising to a more or less invasive way, so people accept it more in the future? Thank you.
What was your name, sorry?
Senior?
Senior, yeah.
In my personal work as an artist, what I try to do is bring an understanding of what advertisement could mean to the general public. For me, it's important that advertisements don't disappear into a layer of such non-invasiveness that people would not be able to distinguish whether what they're saying is an advertisement or not. And so part of my work as an artist has been to try and give people some tools in order to determine themselves or think by themselves what it is that they want to see online and what it is that they don't.
Cool. Thank you. We have time for one more question, so we will go over here, Monin. Where Monin, she's there, she's coming from the back. It's a little bit hard to see. There are two hands. Yeah, you decide yourself. Perfect. Decision making.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Neef. I'm a software engineer at Us2. And I have a question for all three of you, kind of related to advertising and also like digital products that people can buy in the metaverse in the future. Like historically, when like new technologies have enabled people to purchase things in new ways, that's often been accompanied by new ways for people to subvert the system through purchasing. So I'm thinking like burning CD-ROMs when you get something from Blockbuster, or torrenting. I think we all remember the advert about not downloading a car. Do any of you anticipate kind of what the next evolution of like people like resisting from the bottom up is in the metaverse?
I think we have already seen a specific example of that. I mean, Snap released in collaboration with Jeff Koons balloon dogs across different parks in New York virtually or in augmented reality. And these were then sort of like vandalized by street artists with graffiti tags. And I think that's a very perhaps hopeful future that people sort of like still have autonomy within these new sort of like mediated realities, and that sort of like vandalism or graffiti still exists in this virtual layer. So,
I mean, it's a great question. I guess it also ties a lot into what Alice was saying, and like with design has the power of changing or working as a change agent for the benefit of us. Like, who is this us, and what's autonomy and everything around that? With that note, thank you.